Welcome to Resolve to Live Forward. I hope this day finds you well. And yes, I'm getting a late start on the episode that was supposed to have taken place this past Friday on what was, let me look at my calendar for a second. Oh, yeah, the 20th day of the month. And today is the 24th. So obviously, I'm a handful of days late. Just a lot of extenuating circumstances. My apologies again for those of you that were looking for me. I hope that this episode of Resolve to Live Forward finds you well. Resolve to Live Forward is a podcast that can be heard and in some cases seen on a number of podcasting platforms through the services of Budsprout, which is a podcast hosting platform. Among the two particular platforms that I'm especially thankful to be on, it is the Apple Store for Apple Podcasting, as well as Spotify. There are others, and of course, I also have a YouTube channel, and this particular episode, which is being recorded, will be uploaded to the YouTube channel a little bit later today. I'm going to talk to you right now and pick up where we had left off. And for those of you that follow, thank you. I've noticed the uptick in downloads, and I'm thankful, thankful, thankful. I can't say it enough for the fact that you have been watching me, that you have been listening to me, that you have engaged by making your presence known. And we start with small things and we just keep building. It's also hard to believe that I'm already into the third year of doing this podcast. Time flies when you're having fun. Sometimes it flies when you're not having fun, although my experience has always been when things are not fun, it seems forever before they finally resolve and you get to move in a more positive direction. We had been talking about enthusiasm, and I promised you in this particular episode that I would touch on something that I believe wholeheartedly in, but at the same time, I confess to you, I struggle with. Those among you who know me and know my story and have followed me, I don't have to rehash this with you. Some of you might be discovering this podcast and me for the first time ever. And thank you, first of all, for stopping and checking it. And I hope you'll stick around because I want to talk about the power of choosing to be enthusiastic. But I want to also point something out to you that's very, very important. At the date of this particular recording, it is a Tuesday. It is March 24th. A lot of things going on in the world, a lot of things going on here locally in my community, as well as in the state that I live in. And I live in Florida. I live specifically in Central Florida, in Lakeland, Florida, to be exact. For those of you that may not know, geographically, Lakeland is positioned along the I-4 corridor, about halfway between Tampa, Florida, and Orlando, Florida. I've lived in Lakeland since 1975. I married my late wife, Donna, in August of 1973, spent roughly a year and a half, and by the way, emphasis on the word rough, roughly a year and a half working for a retail giant, came to hate the job. Plus, the first actual retail location that I was assigned to was in a community that I had no familiarity with whatsoever. And the same was true for my wife, and we're newlyweds. And back in the day, I will tell you that retail stores, these big, giant, low cost provider retail stores, if you were in the management program and you were an assistant store manager, you weren't on a fixed hourly schedule. You were salaried and you had to be in the store when the big boss said to be in the store. And there was just so much more associated with that job that I found out through the experiences that I had during that year and one half that I was there. I wasn't equipped to handle, not uh, intelligent wise, not emotional, not even morally. And I developed a very, very negative mindset, and that negative mindset put me at odds with the management. And there was a situation that arose where the manager of the store said, "You really don't need to be working here anymore, but we'll let you submit your resignation rather than put a mark or blemish on your resume for being terminated, for cause." At that particular time in 1975, it was February of 1975, the nation was going through a very, very difficult time financially because of extenuating circumstances. I recommend you check the history of the United States in the 70s just to get a handle on how things were. But I realized that the best thing that I could do for myself, but more importantly for my beautiful wife, Donna, was to relocate to Florida, where she was from. Here in Lakeland was where she was born and raised. And there she would have community, she would have family, she would have church, she would have the relationships of the people that she had gone to high school with and grown up with. And me, I really didn't see any reason to move back to my hometown because that particular area was going through a very, very depressed period as far as its economy was concerned, and finding work was very, very difficult there. And I would have better success because Florida was starting to emerge into a force to be reckoned with as far as development and growth was concerned. But because it was Lakeland, I was able to be in an area where you didn't have the craziness that you get in the tourist areas and along what we call the big cities, which are almost always positioned on coastal areas for the most part. And although Disney was nearby, Disney was only just the Magic Kingdom at that time. We're talking 1975. And so it was a fascinating thing, and I got to enjoy Disney very much. Of course, first time I ever visited Disney was actually in September of 1972. But that having been said, there was just opportunity to find work, and I did, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I've lived in Lakeland ever since 1975. Now, I say all of that simply to tell you that today, of course, things are much, much more active, busy, sometimes a little bit chaotic and crazy. It's a different kind of world. Um, and of course, too, the thing is that this coming June 2nd of the year 2026 will mark the seventh anniversary of the death of my wife, which I saw happen right in front of me. And those 7 years have presented incredible opportunities, but they've also presented incredible struggles. And I'm going to make a confession to you. For those of us who have dared to love, and that's a telling phrase, Brene Brown, as a matter of fact, talks about that in one of her books that I'm currently listening to on Audible. Brene Brown said that the bravest people that she knows are the heartbroken because they dared to love without condition, or they dared to love unconditionally. My wife and I, almost 46 years married, in love with each other for over 46 years. If she had lived until August the 18th in 2019, it would have been our 46th wedding anniversary. That put me into this particular area of my life, and there were so many things that happened leading up to that that put me in a position where I was somewhat equipped to be able to move forward and be useful and functional and produce. That's how I got into going through the grief cycle, learning about doing as best as possible to deal with that grief and to put that grief in the proper context that it would give me an opportunity to be useful, productive, and perhaps maybe give something in a way of paying forward to help others who were either already in the grief cycle as myself or someday will enter that, because part of understanding grief is that grief is not just about death. Grief is about anything that devastates your life emotionally or financially or physically, and it damages you. And moving forward with it is a struggle. And some people don't successfully move forward. They arrive at a place where they give up. Now, having said that, I have bad days. This is where I want to talk about, from my own personal perspective, this word enthusiasm. For those of you who've been following me, you know that the enthusiasm that I'm talking about, which starts with a letter E, represents the last letter in my power word, resolve, Resolve. To recap, the previous six letters are representative of resilience, engagement, service, organization, learning, vision, and lastly, enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is often thought of as something that occurs when you're motivated, you get excited. And I do have an enthusiasm for many, many things. I can think about my granddaughters, Donna Melrose Morrow and Elizabeth Marie Morrow. Donna Mel and Issa, as we call the 3-year-old, and the other one is 6. I get enthused when I think about those girls because they are my granddaughters. They came too after my wife had passed away, but they are an extension of her as well as me. And of course, my pride and joy for my only son, Donald, who is married to Claudine, and that is my family. And they live about 45 minutes to an hour from where I live. They live over in South Hillsborough County, south of Tampa, in an area that is called Ruskin. And they are both successful business people. They work very, very hard and they put in a lot of time and effort, but they take care of those girls and make sure that they have the best possible environment. I get enthused when I think about my granddaughters. I get enthused when I think about Toastmasters. I get enthused when I think about my particular faith and my church that I attend and the family and friends that I have there. I get enthused about the community of people that have become a part of my life over the years that I've lived here in Lakeland, including many who were a part of my business life and careers over these many years since I've been here, starting in 1975. But those are things which, in and of themselves, are wired to create enthusiasm in me. The response is enthusiasm. What about when you don't feel enthused, but you know you must be productive? The quick question today, the principal core question today is there such a thing as choosing to be enthusiastic? In recent times, I've had an increase in the level of sadness because there are still very telling images and other things which together coalesce to remind me of a woman that I miss desperately. Missing her desperately, some would say, come on, she's dead. Get over it. That's a harsh thing to say. And I don't really think anyone who says that, if they have loved to the depth and degree that I loved my wife, I don't think they would say that. I don't think they would say, move on, get over it. There's so much more that you need to be doing for you. And maybe they'll even say you need to be doing for you and for others. It's your life. Make the most of it. Get what you want. Live to fulfill what you desire. But you see, the thing about it is that there is, generally speaking, not that many things that I desire that are more important than my desire for the company and companionship of someone who is deceased. The grieving process, when you have forever lost someone in this lifetime that meant everything to you, leaves you very badly broken. And even if you're repaired, it's kind of like, can I use the vase? The vase is broken into pieces, and it could be glued together, but it won't look like it was because it's not really a whole, undamaged vase. It probably cannot hold fluid successfully. And if you put dirt in it and made it a planter, there's no guarantee that it won't break in places because there is no glue that's going to hold it together so effectively that it couldn't possibly crack. The whole point is that you can't go back to what it was before it happened. So, what are you going to do with what has happened? Now, there are days when sorrow creeps in. You may have heard me say this before in a previous episode where I said you've heard the phrase getting up on the wrong side of the bed. And I've thought about that. And the more I thought about it, the more it occurred to me it's not, okay, it's obviously it's an adage and it has merit. And it does speak to the thing about how people get up and they get up in such a way that they're already ready to just go into the day with the wrong attitude, in a bad mood, or maybe with something like grinding an axe with something else on their mind. But for me, it's more like getting up on the wrong side of an attitude. And there are no 2 days that are exactly the same, and not every day is a great day. And many, many things happen. And as we get older, the accumulation of the experiences of life, you have to prioritize them or categorize them or allocate them or box them or store them in such a way that you find yourself looking to try to push that out of the way if it's possible, if it's fixable, perhaps maybe get it out of the way. But to be able to be effective every day, in other words, to live that resolved definition of having a definite, firm plan of action and doing those things that involve resilience, engagement, service, organization, learning, and vision, you need enthusiasm because enthusiasm is a motivator. But what if you don't feel enthusiastic? Can you, in a sense, will yourself to be enthusiastic? I believe you can. Not every time, but I believe you can more than you think because I've done it. Now, having said that, I certainly haven't mastered it. What we think, the self-talk, the self-images, the things that we allow ourselves through the experience of living to bring up to the forefront of our thought process, they can have negative or positive effect depending upon what it is. It's very important that we remember that negative self images negative reminders, negative self-talk. These are things that we must work to discipline our thinking so that when they do come up, we push back. They're already there because they're hardwired. We'd like to unremember a lot of things, but our brain is truly that steel trap that people talk about. There are things that we will not forget. We will never be able to erase those images from our memory. Our brains are fearfully and wonderfully made. And how our brain operates and what the stimuli and the conditioning and the environments that we've lived in and have gone through, those profoundly influence who we are. It's a conditioning process. I'm not a psychiatrist, a psychologist. I'm not professionally trained. I'm speaking from experience, and I do listen to and read and watch and study, understanding the human mind, the capacity of the brain through neuroplasticity to create new pathways, new centers of learning, new images, and to reframe things that are painful. This is all part of that process. But we're never going to be able to have a perfectly precise, precision, and pristine mindset. We're going to have to challenge ourselves. We're going to have to push back against the negative. And the idea of resolving to will yourself to be enthusiastic is an intentional choice that you make, and it will never 100% work because certain things happen and they become the principal focus of what you have to do because it involves solving a problem, confronting a risk or a danger, dealing with bad news, perhaps maybe any one of a number of things. I don't have a list here to delineate because I'm talking very extemporaneously and openly about something that I'm still working on. But I sincerely want to say this, and I believe this, and I believe it completely. We can, by choice, by intention, change what we allow our mind to roll around in the front and redirect it towards something that will create a positivity, a desire to step forward enthusiastically, practice resilience, engage the day and the opportunities, both planned and unexpected, look to serve and to be selfless in that process, to find ways to organize and structure for better, more consistent congruity of process. Always look for the learning opportunities and keep that love of learning at the forefront and visualize more of the positive and learn to suppress and set aside the negative. And then through that, have an enthusiastic mindset. So the moment you engage all of these situations, you can engage with a warmth in your personality, a smile on your face, and a sincerity. Now, someone would say, willing yourself to be enthusiastic, that's acting. Okay. And there are people that can act and they're very good at it. My thought process is simple. If negative things cause you to hurt and to suffer and to be bitter, Why do you dwell on them? Why not dwell on things which bring you reassurance, a smile, happiness, joy, excitement, anticipation, eagerness? Enthusiasm is a powerful thing. Enthusiasm should be something we strive for, even on days when we don't feel like being enthusiastic. Is there a specific formula? I don't know. I only know what has helped me, and that is one, take an inventory of what's going on in your mind and why it's there. Is there anything there that could cause negative feelings to arise? Find a way to stifle that and clamp it. If there is a struggle that is present, work not towards trying to get away from it. Work towards finding a way to turn it into a positive. And then if it's obvious that you can't get a positive out of it, then either seek the help you need to deal with it or then find a way to get away from it. Now, that doesn't mean put off everything that doesn't make you happy. Life doesn't work that way. But I do know that what we do with our minds and our mindset and in our process of living each and every single day is clearly something we have a degree of control. We can't control everything that happens, but we can control how we respond to it. And that's what I'm going to leave you with as we wrap up this podcast. Don't wait for something to happen that makes you enthused. Granted, things will happen that will kindle that enthusiasm. But the reality of life is that so much happens and things happen that damage you permanently. And being damaged permanently doesn't mean that you become marginal or even useless. You can, through the power of the right mindset, will yourself to go forward with a positive mental mindset. And enthusiasm can be an integral part of that. How you reframe that, we could talk more about that, and we may. But we'll have that discussion in the next podcast. Resolve to Live Forward is a podcast that is available, as I said, on Spotify, the Apple Podcast Store, and other podcast platforms through Buzzsprout. I have a YouTube channel, which I will also be uploading this particular video to. It's in video as well as audio format. And I will tell you that I have an email, johnmorrowcoaching@gmail.com, johnmorrowcoaching@gmail.com. And by the way, if you want to hear my speech, which is entitled Living Forward is a Choice, my TED Talk, my TEDx talk, it is now available on YouTube at TEDx Lake Alfred. TEDx Lake Alfred. I hope you'll check it out. I'm out of time. It's been a pleasure being with you. Thank you again for your patience. I apologize again for being late, but I'm glad to be able to do this and bring this to you today. And may I just say, as I bring this program to a close, like I always want to say, no matter what you do each and every single day, stop for a second and realize living forward is a choice. Therefore, resolve each and every single day to live forward. John Morrow saying so long.